Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Lawrence, and I'm a consultant with the CCE. Today, we're going to talk about slide preparation for the 3MT competition. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk today about slide requirements. What are you allowed? How to use your slide effectively, how to design your slide, and throughout we'll have some examples of things to do, things not to do, and things that you can judge for yourself, whether these look good or not. So first off, what are you required to have? What are you allowed? You get two slides. One is a title slide with your name. That will be shown behind you as you're setting up and getting ready and being introduced. And then as soon as you begin talking, the moderator will switch to your second slide. This is your main slide that you're going to design. This is your presentation slide with any static images or words that you choose. It must be presented immediately when you start talking, and you are not allowed to use any animations, sound, video, GIFs, none of that. So only static images and words. Even though that feels a little limiting, there's still quite a bit of room to work with. So how do we do that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So before we get too far into this, we are going to give you suggestions. They are just that, suggestions, guidelines. These are helpful hints, not requirements. So choose for yourself whether these work for you, but know that these have been developed based on previous performances that have done well at 3MT. So first off, how are we going to use our slide effectively? We want this to help tell your story. Images, slide design should be a visual representation of what you're saying. So avoid window dressing images, things that are just up there to fill space. We want it to add to your story, to bring the audience in. Plots and figures are okay. Many of us are researchers and scientists, but your audience may not be. They're not all experts, maybe not even in science. So explain them well. Since we can't use animations, sound, or video, use the PPT technique to present. So that is pivot, point, and present. Using directive language and this PPT technique is going to help guide your audience to wherever you want them to focus on your slide. As a bonus, I would suggest avoiding note cards. Use your slide for those reminders. It's often looked down upon to use a note card, so using your slide to help you remember the order in which you are going to say things or present things is a little more acceptable and hopefully easy enough with enough practice. Let's talk about an example. This TED Talk is using one image and two blocks of text. This is very uncluttered. There's lots of white space. I can already tell that this presenter probably wants to talk about a run, probably a track run of some kind, maybe a record that's been broken in that year with that time. So if we're talking about a timeline, we're focusing on one point in time, one example. It's very simple, it's very concise, but it's focusing the audience, maybe even kind of drawing them into the story that we're going to tell, right? There's a record, there's running. So that's kind of the other piece that we can talk about, is how to draw the audience in. Here's another example that does that very well. Does this invoke a response in you? This has been captured right before the critical moment, right? When all of the things are about to fall and crash into the ocean, maybe the ship's about to tip over, we're not sure, but it invokes that cringe feeling, that negativity. But if we zoom out and look at how this was designed, we have one image and three words. This is a pretty simple slide. So this is a great way to help draw the audience into a feeling. If we're talking about preparing to fail, that's a negative feeling. So the presenter is creating that negative emotion in you to help kind of draw you into the story, engage you in what they're talking about. This is what we're talking about with drawing the audience in. Now, many of us are researchers and scientists. We like our plots and figures, so how do we use that? Let me give you an example. So I'm just going to kind of make this up based on these images. So research shows that just having 5 users give feedback on a new website catches almost 85% of usability issues. Any time and resources spent after that fall victim to the law of diminishing returns. We don't see a lot of benefit out. So we're best spent having just 5 users give us that feedback and then going live with the website. However, catching these usability issues is very important to increasing website traffic. As we can see in the lower right-hand image, the usability issues being fixed with those 5 users increased website traffic very significantly. So this is a great way to spend your time and resources and then go live with that website. So that was just an option of how to present plots and figures. So big takeaways here. I had to spend some time explaining that. So if you feel like you don't have enough time to explain that well, consider that when choosing to include plots or figures. A good way to minimize the time is to make those very obvious, the trends, and to maybe put the takeaway points right on the figure, like the upper left-hand corner here. 5 users, 85% chance, right? It's highlighted, it's right there for the reader to take away. You don't have to spend a ton of time explaining that. So that would be a way to use directive language, bring those trends to the forefront. If you don't feel like you have time to do that, maybe just talk about the overarching trends. We see an increase when we do this, we see a decrease when we do that. So slide design. Avoid cluttering the slide. Less is more. Focus on quality over quantity, right? Those previous examples, we used maybe 1 image, 3 words. Very, very simple and concise. Ensure that it's legible, it's clear, and it's concise. Otherwise, the audience is going to get distracted. They won't be as engaged. And we want to connect with our audience. Use a personal story or a metaphor to help connect. Maybe elicit that emotion, like our second example. And plots and figures are okay, but just keep in mind they're not all experts. So explain them well, and if you don't have time, focus on those general trends and results. Now there's an extra piece called the rule of thirds. Some of our design folks may be more familiar with this, but I was not, and this has been very helpful for designing slides. So let's talk about it a little bit. What is it? The rule of thirds is going to break your slide into 3 rows and 3 columns. Those are dividing lines. At the intersection, we have what are called PowerPoints. And this rule of thirds, locating things along these lines or these PowerPoints, is more visually appealing to our psychology, and it helps draw the audience's eye to that focal point. So as an example, we have a field here with a tree line or hill in the background. And if you look at the following 3 images, A, B, and C, which do you find more visually appealing? Most folks answer B or C. Aligning that tree line, the focal point, along one of those lines is more appealing and naturally draws your eye. So what are some ways that we can use this? We've got 4 examples here. So in the upper left, we're locating our focus piece at a PowerPoint, the trees at that intersection of the lines. Below that, the horses are located along a line, so we're seeing that running horse visual. On the right, we have vertical lines, the woman at the pool, and in the middle, you can see a mix of all of these. So we have the person aligned with a vertical line, and we have the block of text located near that PowerPoint. Notice that it's not centered there. It's not necessarily even quite aligned with that point. But the focus part of that whole block of text is near that PowerPoint. So it becomes more visually appealing and it naturally draws your eye. In an actual slide that you might use for 3MT, we're going to locate those things along those lines and PowerPoints. So locating the blue chess piece right at an intersection and aligning that text with both horizontal and vertical lines, very close to a PowerPoint. You can also align images close to the lines. You can put a single word in a block of text that you want them to focus on, like the word disaster in the lower right-hand corner there, located at a PowerPoint to draw your attention. So there's a couple ways to use this. Again, not perfect alignment, not always located exactly along the lines, centered there. Just a general trend towards alignment and focus in those areas is going to make your slide more visually appealing. There's many examples online, don't hesitate to look up more. Other considerations for slide design: color. We don't want to overdo color. We don't want to use the rainbow, we want to focus on a color palette. As a bonus, you could even focus on accessibility, right? Color blindness, we can focus on blues or blacks, shades, rather than spraying lots of different colors on there that people may not be able to see. Fonts are another question that we get. Serif fonts have the tails. They can be a little fuzzy and hard to read because those lines blur together. We would usually prefer sans serif or without tails, which is the letter on the right. Little easier to read. Things like Arial or Calibri, those are often default fonts in word processors. As for font size, we recommend a minimum of 24 so that folks in the back can still read your presentation. Let's talk about a couple extra examples here. So, what do you not like about this slide? I would say that there's a little too much text in this location. So very hard to read as an audience member and hard to explain or read as a presenter. So how would we fix this? We have a title, we have 4 main points, so we want to boil that down into the big critical points, maybe even add a little imagery. So this would be a way to fix it. We've still got our title, we've still got our 4 points, but we've boiled it down so that those are big, upfront, easy to read, and then we have maybe another sentence underneath as some extra detail if we want to talk about that or the audience member wants to read it. Another example, maybe too much color. So the lime green background in particular makes me cringe a little bit, so we can use things like color palettes. If you're not necessarily design savvy like myself, PowerPoint already has these built in. So you can go to the Design tab and choose a color palette, and then all of the text that you include, things like arrows or outlines, boxes, circles, those things will all focus on that color palette. It will help you avoid clashing colors, and it will keep you from using too many colors. Our last example here has kind of swung back the other way. So maybe rather than too much, maybe too little. So we've got our black and white, we've got bullet points, we've got numbers, but it's all on the left side. There's no imagery, there's no bolding. It's kind of hard to focus on what they want us to focus on. So maybe adding some imagery, some dimensions, maybe use the rule of thirds, something to create a little more engagement, right? It might be a little boring. So this would be one option for fixing those. We're adding an image. We're still keeping all those points, but we've added some color, some dimensionality with our diagonal lines, and those 1, 2, 3 points pop out with that color, right? So this is all using a color palette, all internal to Microsoft PowerPoint. So keep these things in mind when we're designing our slide, but hopefully you've found some good takeaways from this presentation. Good luck on your presentation, and we would love to help you further at the CCE. We have some more workshops and seminars coming up, so please attend those or schedule an appointment with us so we can help you individually. Last but not least, I did not create all these examples myself, so thank you to these web sources for the imagery and the examples. And we at the CCE always appreciate feedback. So if you have an extra 3 minutes, if you could scan the code and give us some feedback, we'd really appreciate it. We want to know what you like, dislike, ways to improve, always a good thing. So good luck on your presentation, and let us know if we can help you further.